And we're here live. We're here with Damon from Bookfunnel. Thank you for joining us, Damon.
Hey Tar, how you doing?
I'm very well, very well. We were just talking about potential trips coming up, so it definitely feels like we're coming out of the end of this year, which is exciting. I know
Yeah.
because I feel like I haven't seen you in person in ages. It's so weird. We were just kind of overlapping on the conference circuit for such a regular occurrence, and then I was like, man, I haven't talked to Damon in ages.
Yeah, we usually bump into each other, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year at least at the bigger
Yeah,
conferences for sure. I know with 20 books last year, you sent some of your minions, but
I sure did.
yeah, we but maybe now you're thinking you want to get out and go do something, huh?
Oh yeah, the second the Canadian government opens up the borders, I'll be coming down there for sure.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in to another live Q&A with Kobo Writing Live. Let us know where in the world you're coming from to view. That's always really fun for us. You can let us know in the comments. And if you have any questions for Damon throughout the chat, drop them into the comments and I'll try and get to as many as possible. I'll be pulling them as we're chatting. So Damon, you have come and talked to us before. I'd like to formally welcome you back. I think you might be our first recurring guest.
Ooh, I've had that happen a couple of times actually. So it feels really good to be the first one that actually gets invited back for a second time.
Well, you guys keep just releasing so many new things, and authors are always talking about how much they love Bookfunnel. So we had to absolutely bring you back to
Yeah.
tell us all about all of the new features. And one of the things that I really love the tagline that Bookfunnel has as the essential tool for your author business.
Yes.
It's definitely what we hear in feedback from authors for sure. And I was just wondering if there's anyone that's not familiar with Bookfunnel, could you tell us a little bit about it and your creation story?
Sure. So it really all started from my own personal needs. I'd self-published one book. I was doing a fantasy trilogy. I'm a fantasy author, so dragons and wizards and elves. And I published one book, and I just published the second book, and I was sort of had reached that point where I felt like, okay, I kind of got a handle on this writing thing. Maybe I should actually try to sell some books. And so I published my book, and I was putting it out there into the world, and a few people had read it, but I would like to get more people to read it. So I was trying to looking around for, okay, how do I do that? What's sort of the next step? As a techie guy, I come from the world of programming and the internet and have been on that for 20 and 30 years of my life. So the idea of starting a newsletter and having a place where readers could actually talk directly to me was appealing. And like, okay, that sounds like something I could do. So I started looking into that, and that was the sort of advice from a lot of the authors at the time was, you should start a newsletter, and oh, by the way, you should give them like a free short story or a novella or something to entice them to join your newsletter. And I thought, oh, I could do that. So I went out and I wrote a short story that ended up being a 25,000 word novella because I'm very wordy and I couldn't stop. But when I was done, I was like, oh, this is really nice. I actually like this story a whole lot. Yes, this will be my reader magnet, which we didn't call them reader magnets then, but that's kind of a term that authors have come to recognize. And so I had it in hand, and I was like, okay, great. Let's get this reader magnet out to some readers. How do you do that? And I looked at all of the sort of the biggest authors at the time that were doing this, and all of them were basically emailing, EPUBs and Mobies and PDFs to people and saying, here, thanks for joining my list. Here's your free book. And I thought, man, there's no way that people are going to be able to figure that out. I mean, I'm a techie guy, and I know how to get a book to my Kindle at the time, but nobody, your average person is not going to be able to do that. And as it turned out, I would listen to podcasts with other authors, the bigger authors, and yeah, they'd figured that part out. Nobody could figure out how to do this. And so authors were basically doing tons of tech support just to give their readers a free book. And so I thought, there's got to be a better way. And so Bookfunnel was built to solve that problem. And it really is, when we started, it used to be so much easier to describe what Bookfunnel did. We've been doing this for 5 years. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, well, we'll help readers get your free book onto their device, whatever their device is. If they're reading on a Kindle, we'll help them get it to their Kindle. If they're on a Kobo, back when Kobo had tablets, oh yeah, we've got Kobo tablets. You guys got out of that business, which is probably for the best. The e-readers are fantastic. I have a Kobo Forma. That's what I do all my reading on. But like we went and said, we'll do all that tech support for you, right? And that was the initial release of Bookfunnel, was just sort of that. We'll help you. We'll do all the tech support so you don't have to. Now we do so much more, and it's a whole lot harder. The essential tool for your author business was really what we came up with, also using input from our authors, not direct input, but we would see on Facebook when somebody would ask about, hey, what's this Bookfunnel thing? It's like, oh yeah, it's essential. I use it for everything in my author business. And we're like, hey, maybe that's a thing. Maybe we should remember that what that guy said. Maybe we should talk about that. And so now we do all kinds of things.
Nice. I can't believe it's just been 5 years of Bookfunnel and that you guys have kind of added and expanded so many things that you've offered to authors. That's really awesome. So as we've mentioned, there's like lots of stuff, but the reader magnet was how it was sort of initially imagined, like for you as an author yourself. Is that still the most common thing that authors are using Bookfunnel for, like as a way of just, getting like a newsletter sort of copy? Is that what you would see most common?
That's probably still the most common thing. We get used for all kinds of stuff now. The great thing is that almost everything we had built over the last 4 or 5 years was built on that core technology of we're going to help your readers get the book to their device. And our support team, it's basically like we want readers to get their book as quickly and as easily as possible. Sometimes it's easier on more devices sometimes than it is on others. And so we're there to help. Our support team is there to help if they have a problem. Everything else that we built was actually built on top of that core technology. We built very quickly. We got authors saying, well, I'd really like to send out my advanced review copies, but I don't want to put just like a link up on the web where it could be shared with other people. I just want to send it to specific people. So probably, I think just 3 or 4 months after we launched Bookfunnel with just the initial reader magnet delivery, we created a service called Certified Mail where you can actually give us the email addresses and we'll email a unique private download link to each individual person so that we can keep track of those links. We can tell when your readers have downloaded it. And then more importantly, once that book has been downloaded, that link is dead and that it can't be shared with someone else. So, but that's once they get the link, the technology to download their books, well, all of that is exactly what we built from the very beginning. So it was really just creating a slight variations of that. And then, we came up with a whole lot of other stuff. But yes, by and large, what most people are signing up for Bookfunnel still is collecting those readers, building that newsletter, and then delivery of their reader magnet.
Nice. I like that you mentioned the ARCs. I had a note about that I really love the certified mail because, especially when you're sending out review copies and advanced copies at all, you don't want anything to just end up online or for people to just take advantage of it. You want to make sure you're getting to like the good reviewers.
Yes.
And as authors know, like building up a great mailing list is so important. So can you talk a little bit about how Bookfunnel really helps authors to have like I don't want to say like clean, but like a good mailing list?
Well, so if you come in, I always tell authors that the best traffic that you can possibly get to your mailing list is going to be that organic traffic. So as you're putting your books out there, and I will say that for those authors that are just starting and maybe they have one book published or even they haven't published their first book, it's never too early to start thinking about that. What happens is, when I put my first book out, which I will admit, my first book was published in 2011, when sometimes it felt like in indie publishing, you could just sort of flop a book out there and people would buy it. And now there are so many more authors and there are so many more books, and you really, indie authors had to up their game. In the beginning, we weren't even really competing with traditional published authors because their books were $19.99 for an ebook and ours were 99 cents in some cases. So for readers, there was no comparison at all. They were just like, if your book was good, and sometimes even if your book wasn't so good, well, I'll pick it up for $1. But that was 10 years ago. And now you can't get into the self-publishing game without, you need a good cover. You need a good tagline. Your book needs to be maybe not professionally edited, but for sure it needs to have gone through several edits and there aren't a bunch of typos on page 1, right? Mm-hmm. So once you get that book out there into the world, anybody who comes along and reads it, because you don't know where your book is going to end up, right? Some of the biggest authors today, some of those that are good, that I'm good friends with, they put their book out there and thought, oh, I really love this book. It's great, but nobody's going to read it. And a few of them, it took off like a rocket. And you ask them, how did your book take off? I have no idea. I have no idea who discovered it. I have no idea where it started. But suddenly, thousands and thousands of people were reading my book out of nowhere. And I had no expectation that was going to happen. And of course, the problem is now they're looking to build their newsletter. But all those tens of thousands of people who read it back when you thought it wasn't going to be anything, you missed the opportunity to get those people. They reached the end of your book, and right there you had the opportunity to say, hey, I hope you love this book. I'd love it if you join my newsletter where I talk about the, new books that I'm going to be releasing and stuff like that, right? So you lost that opportunity for all those thousands of readers that came before. Now, don't worry if you're just starting now, or if you've been out there for a little while and you haven't built your newsletter yet. There's never a wrong time to get started, but it's never too early to get started. And it really makes you, from the very beginning, start to think about those readers. And I think that's a big part where self-publishing has been really amazing for authors and for readers, is that when you're starting off, if your mindset is always that I am the author, you are the reader, and never should anyone be between us. That is not an attitude that traditional publishing ever took, right? You might know the names of your authors. Most people had no idea which companies were publishing their books, but there was never a way that you could reach out and just talk to your favorite author. Not like you can now. I can ping my favorite author on Twitter and just say, hi, I loved your latest book. And half the time they'll reply, right? That is not something that's ever existed in publishing before. And so I want indies and self-publishers to really think about the ways that you can do things differently. And that is a big, big one, that you can do things differently from other people that are in the game. And that is create that direct connection with your readers. Don't be afraid to talk directly to your readers, because they will love you for it. Again, keep in mind that readers who've been reading their whole lives, they've never had that experience. They've never had the experience of emailing an author and saying, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I really enjoyed your latest book. And then they get a reply. That's the coolest thing in the world, for a book that you just read and you thought, my God, I love this book. And then suddenly the author's like, hey, I'm so glad you liked it. I appreciate you dropping me a note. I'm working on the next book. Hey, by the way, what was your favorite character in the book? And you're just like, can't believe that the author actually replied to you. And so that is something that we have in self-publishing that is still not really, not to dump on traditional publishing, but like I some of the books that I've read recently, I love Tor. They're a big fantasy publisher. I read a lot of their books, but every one of their ebooks is a sign up for Tor's newsletter, never the author that I'm reading. I'm always prompted to sign up for Tor's newsletter. And be fair, Tor has a great newsletter. It's all about fantasy, sci-fi. It's great stuff, but it's not the author's newsletter. And so as an indie author, you have that opportunity to get people onto that list. And it's never too early to start building that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's definitely something that, as wide authors, the newsletter is really valuable, because you're hitting all the multiple retailers. And we're kind of noticing a trend of people sort of, dipping in between exclusivity and wide. But I would definitely recommend, regardless of which way you go, you should be building your newsletter. And like you were saying, Damon, don't think you're too late. You always start and try and kind of build up the best mailing list that you have there. So we have a couple of people saying where they were coming from. We have people from all over, Damon. This is very exciting. Rashid is in West Africa. Jenny is in New Zealand. We have Rasana in the Bay Area. I know. It's very impressive. So yeah, it's very exciting to see people from all over and getting some good questions in. So be sure to keep dropping these in. Kate Webster says, I love Bookfunnel. I had a release a couple of weeks ago and put a bonus chapter on Bookfunnel. I got like 500 downloads for that little story, which resulted in 500 new newsletter subscribers.
Absolutely. Bonus chapters and things like that are really, really good, because number one, if somebody's just gotten to the end of the book and hopefully they like the book, if they didn't like the book, chances are they don't want to read a bonus chapter, right? Nobody gets to the end of a bad meal and was like, I think I'll order another round. So if you get to the end of the book and they really enjoyed the book, and here you come along and say, hey, I would love for you to join my newsletter. I have a bonus chapter that comes, a year after the book, right? So not, don't, I see this happen sometimes. Don't take the ending away from the reader and, lock it in a box where they have to get it over here. Readers will feel like you cheated them on that case. So what you want to do is you want to finish the book, but then there's a little bit something that happens later that I would love for you to find out. And it's free. Just join my newsletter and you can read it for free. And that's a huge draw, because for all of those readers that do get to the end of the book, well, they want to know what happens a year later, right? They want to find out what happened to the characters after that. So that can be a really, really great draw for getting readers to join your newsletter. And to what you were saying earlier about sort of the exclusive versus wide debate, right? I would almost say, I usually tell authors that if you are exclusive, you have an even more important job of getting readers to your newsletter, because the readers that are reading exclusively through Kindle Unlimited, they burn through books so quickly that oftentimes they don't even know the names of the authors that they're reading. They read a book and they're like, oh, that was a great book. And then they move on to the next book. So they are not going to know who you are, and they're never going to become a super fan of your work. They might love small town romance. And so that's great. If you put out small town romance, it might cross their radar and they might read it if it shows up and Amazon blesses you with their algorithms and pushes it up for you. But if not, it's your job. It's on you to get those readers over to your book. Either way, the beauty of the newsletter is that, like Kate was saying, if you build a list organically through a bonus chapter and things like that, then you're getting readers that they read to the end of your book. Like, that they've actually read one of your books because that bonus chapter was at the end of the book. So they had to have gotten to the end, and they had to have liked it enough that they said, you know what? I like this book. I'd like to read the bonus chapter. That list of 500 readers that she gained, that's gold. Those readers are either already super fans or they're well on their way to becoming super fans. And if you can take a reader who just picked up your book, and who knows, again, you don't know where your readers are going to come from all the time. If you put your book out wide and you put it into all the stores, you don't know. They might read it on Overdrive from the library, right? They might have picked it up there. Hoopla is another library service. You don't always know where your readers are coming from, but I can tell you, you want to know where you want them going, and that is to get them onto your newsletter. Because if you can take a reader who just happened to pick up a book and really liked it, and through good marketing, right? And that's a term that we authors hate. We hate to talk. Oh, don't talk about marketing. But marketing doesn't have to be, hey, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Marketing can be, I'm so glad you loved my book. I'm so glad you enjoyed the book. Tell me who your favorite, who was your favorite character? What was your favorite part? My favorite scene was this. And, sometimes that can be really personal. You can answer every email yourself. Sometimes it can be just a standard response that you send back when people email you. But that is marketing, right? Even though you're just being yourself. And it is really better to be yourself and let readers know exactly what kind of author you are. You see me making noises and being silly, and that's who I am. If you meet me in person, you're not going to get anything different. And I would want my readers to know exactly what kind of author that I am. And so as you build up those readers and you take that reader and you turn them into a super fan, that is a reader who is going to buy everything you write and publish for the rest of your publishing career. I have authors that I have read for more than 30 years. And still, when they put a book out today, it's an instant buy. I don't even care what it is. That author, nope, I'll take it. They wrote it? Yep, I'll take it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is definitely the super fan that you want to go for. The dedicated fan that's going to keep reading your books and kind of follow each one that you put out, for sure. I just want to update that it is 4 a.m. in New Zealand, and
and well, Jenny, thank you for joining us. Woo!
And Jenny is going to the gym at 5 a.m. So hats off, Jenny.
Oh, I applaud those gym people, the people that can get up, and then you actually have to get up. If you have to be at work, let's say it's 7 a.m. and you're like, no, I need to get up at 4 a.m. so that I can go to the gym at 5 a.m. If I have to be work at 7 a.m. and it takes 40 minutes for me to drive to work, I will be out of bed at 6:15 so that I can get into the car by 6:20.
I am exactly the same. I'm a snooze alarm person for sure until the very last second. So Jane Ann is in Canada, as am I, and she has a question. She says that she loves Bookfunnel, and was just wondering the best way to use it as a reader magnet. Should she send the readers to Bookfunnel to leave their email, or is it better for them to go directly to her list, like through MailerLite or MailChimp? Do you have a best practice of which is easier, Damon?
Easier. I wouldn't say that either one. And so MailChimp, MailerLite, all the major email service providers give you a way to build a landing page that you can, use, that you can put into their books, you can use to sign people up or put them on your own website. Bookfunnel offers the same service, which is just a simple landing page that you can gain a sign up for. I will tell you that our sign up pages are built for books. It's something that we have. When you take a service like MailChimp, they are an email service provider for anything in the world. You want to an email. You want to create an email list for your local neighborhood HOA. You want to have an email list for your farmers market. They do everything under the sun, and so they have to create things that are going to work everywhere in the world. Bookfunnel only deals with authors, and that's all the audience that I care about. And so everything about our landing pages is tailored exactly to books. If you look at one of our landing pages, it's your big, beautiful book cover right there, front and center. Immediately following your book cover is your book's tagline, if you have one, and you should think about and have one. So that's the hook that's going to grab the reader. And then a big, get my book or sign up button so that they can click that and then sign up for your newsletter. It sounds like I'm biased. I am. Obviously, I built it all. So, I have my opinions, but the sign up forms that you're going to see on MailChimp and MailerLite, they have a lot more flexibility. So you can go into MailChimp and you can say, ask for their first name and their last name and their email address and their date of birth and what city they're in and all this sort of stuff. I would caution you to avoid that, to try and stay away from that. For all the fields that you add, every time you add more information from your reader, you're going to turn more people off. So you're creating a little bit more friction, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but somebody might be turned, even though you have the most altruistic motives, right? If you give me your birthday, we have authors that use, so we have a feature on Bookfunnel called Gift a Book, where you can just email and gift one book to a reader. We have authors that I see all the time that send out books to their readers on their birthdays, right? So they have a list of their readers' birthdays and they send them a free book on their birthday, which I think is a great idea. But asking for a reader's birthday might, for some readers, be a turnoff. Like, I don't want to tell you my birthday. And so Bookfunnel's forms only really allow you to do first name, last name, and email address. And the last name, we even make it optional. Nice. And the name is technically optional if you don't want to add that in, and just ask for their email address. So ours are a lot more limited. We don't let you add a bunch more of those fields. So if you're looking to do that and you really want to gather information like, hey, I'm a wide author and I'd really love to know where you buy your books, you're not going to be able to ask those sorts of questions on Bookfunnel's forms and our landing pages, but our landing pages are definitely designed and tailored to really show off your book with a big book cover and your tagline and your whole book description. And you can theme the pages now. We have the ability to, we released that a few months ago, where you can now theme your pages and you can you can actually replace the Bookfunnel logos with your author logo if you have one, which is kind of next level stuff. Don't think if you're just suddenly, we're just like, what? I don't have a logo. That's not something that everybody has. Don't think that you need an author logo. But if you have one, you can actually replace Bookfunnel's branding on our pages with your branding and really make the page all about you. So there are pros and cons. Personally, I would probably send them through Bookfunnel. There is we've built up a lot of really goodwill among readers. Readers now, when they see Bookfunnel, they're like, oh, I know Bookfunnel. I trust them. I can put my email address in and I know that it's going to go to the author and their email address is not going to end up somewhere else in the world. Not that I think that MailerLite or MailChimp have a bad reputation or anything like that, but we have built up a very strong reputation specifically among readers in the indie publishing community. And so when they see a Bookfunnel page, they know exactly what to do. We've already remembered their email address. It's something that's not a little thing that we do. There's a little cookie that we've set. So when they come back to a Bookfunnel page, if they've done it before, we already have your name plugged in and your email address plugged in, and you can just say, great, get me my book. And then it immediately goes into their Bookfunnel library and they get the email and it does all the things.
Nice. I misread Jane Ann's question. She's a big fan of Bookfunnel and it wasn't either or. She's asking whether it would be better, what's the ordering that would be better to like direct people to Bookfunnel and then download that list and upload it to MailerLite, or send them to MailerLite including the Bookfunnel link?
So the best thing you could do is set up your Bookfunnel account with integrations, which is an upgrade feature. But if you're integrated, then when they do the sign up on the Bookfunnel landing page, which has all the advantages that I just talked about, Bookfunnel will send them straight through to your MailerLite immediately. So you get the best of both worlds. If you don't have that feature and you would prefer, I would say at that point, it is probably better to do the sign up on the MailerLite side, because they're going to immediately go into your list. They're going to immediately get your welcome email and start on that automated sequence. And the most important thing, there's two things that happen when a reader signs up. One, Bookfunnel is there to make sure they get their free book, right? That's our job, and we want to make sure that happens. But the second one, and I would argue that the most important one to you, is after Bookfunnel has done the job of getting them the book, the most important thing is that the reader gets that welcome email, and you get the opportunity to sell them on who you are as an author. So that welcome email comes through and says, thank you so much for signing up. These are the kinds of books that I love, that I grew up reading. These are the kinds of books that I write. And that message is really, really important. So if you can't afford the integration, or you don't want to integrate your Bookfunnel account, or you work with a mailing provider that we don't integrate with. I mean, we integrate with over a dozen, but there are still plenty of them out there that we've never heard of. We still get emails every week for a service that didn't even know existed. So if you're on one of those services, then and Bookfunnel, if you're using our landing pages to collect them, the problem there is it's not an automated process. So you're going to have to go and export those readers and then import them, which is great if you're on top of that stuff. If you're the kind who's like, yes, I import and export at least twice a day, or every day I go and do it. But that means that the reader has signed up. Now they're going to get their book instantly. So Bookfunnel will instantly deliver their book, but then they don't get that welcome email till tomorrow. If they happen to sign up at 2 a.m. and you're not up going to the gym at 4 a.m. in New Zealand, then it might be 11 o'clock, it might be 10 hours later before you get them exported and imported into your mailing list, and now they get your welcome email. And I feel like that's probably a missed opportunity. So if you're not on an integrated account, then I would say go through the MailerLite sign up, and then just send them the link in the welcome email for them to download their book and get it from there. That way they get the message from you instantly. As soon as they sign up, they immediately get your welcome email, and they get the experience of getting to know you, which I think is the most important thing. I mean, that's what your reader magnet is, and that's what it should be, is this is who I am as an author, right? I've seen some authors who are like, oh, they write fantasy, but for some reason their reader magnet is a cute horror short story that they wrote. Don't do that. If you write fantasy, then give them fantasy, because what you're trying to show them is, this is what you're going to get from me. This is the Damon J. Courtney experience, right? This is who I am as an author. And when a reader sees that, they read your free reader magnet and they go, oh, I think I would really like this guy's books or this girl's books.
Nice. Yeah, we have a lot of love for the integrations coming through in the comments, and a few people that didn't realize they existed. So that's really great that you went through the workflow there. That sounds so easy. And also somebody delighted to hear that they can upload their logo.
Yes. Yeah. Themes was just something we released. It really was just about a month ago. So we announced new features on our blog, and we send out an email to everybody that follows our blog. We try not to email our entire list of all of our authors unless we have like a really, really big feature that we want to announce. And so oftentimes we will put out new features and people don't see them. And that's, as a developer, that kind of bums me out, because I spent a lot of time working on that, and I think it's a really amazing feature. But yeah, the themes feature was just released about a month ago. And what it allows you to do is, Bookfunnel's always given you the ability on your landing pages to sort of, change. You own all the text, right? So you can put in your book description, you can put in your tagline, you can say, welcome to my newsletter. You can change all of that stuff. But the one, and we gave you, I think, maybe a dozen color choices that you could choose from to restyle the page so that it, use some colors that look nice. What we didn't give you the ability to do was sort of just change those colors in any way that you wanted. But over the years, what we would get requests for was, we found authors that had really they'd either hired a designer, or some of them were designers, and they had done a lot of work to really build what their brand was, right? And you think about like John Deere green, right? If I say that, if you're American, you know exactly what color green that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you see, Chick-fil-A red, oh, I know which red you're talking about, right? So some of these authors had really done all of that work to make their own logo, to make their own colors. And they would ask us, we're like, well, you got these 12 to choose from. And so the themes was us giving everybody the ability to say, you know what, we want you to build your brand. We want authors to build your brand exactly the way you want it to be. If you have a logo, put your logo up there. I don't need my logo. Like, readers trust, they see the Bookfunnel up in the address bar. They know who we are, and they know that Bookfunnel is going to help them deliver their book, and it's all going to go to their library and their app and all of that sort of stuff. But it sounds hokey, but I've always told authors that we're not in the business of building our brand. We're in the business of building your brand. And that is what I want to put front and center. And with themes, we really put that forward even more. Like, no, get rid of my logos. You don't need my logos. Put your logos on there.
I love that. Yeah, the fact that you're allowing people to just even remove the Bookfunnel logo is just, it's like just a really modest company that you guys are.
It's probably not what business people would do, but I'm not a
You
business person.
you're a
I'm an
book
engineer.
person. Yeah, you're like this book engineer. So just one last question about the integration.
Yeah.
They just set it up once and or do they have to keep setting it up each time?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
No, you set it up. So you go through and you integrate one time. So you would,
Mhm.
the example earlier was MailerLite. You connect your Bookfunnel and your MailerLite accounts. And once they're connected, every time you create a landing page, which for a lot of authors, they just create one landing page and that's the page that they use for everything, for all their signups. And that's great. It really can be that easy. You can just create the landing page. And from the little landing page, you say, okay, anybody who signs up, I want them to go to this MailerLite group and boom, that's it. Set it and forget it. We have so many authors that set up their reader magnet, start using it in the backs of their books, and then don't come back to Bookfunnel for 6-8 months until they have another book to release because they don't need to. Everything just sort of churns like clockwork. So once you set it up that one time, you can go on and create your landing pages, and Bookfunnel will keep that integration live. And every time a reader signs up, they immediately get pushed through directly to your MailerLite or MailChimp or Aweber, ActiveCampaign, all these other integrations.
Lovely. There's an all caps comment that here that you need to start emailing them. They want to know about these new features.
Oh,
Start emailing us now.
as I said, it's probably not the best business decision not to just spam people with email, because the problem is, I don't say a problem, it's a good problem. We release things all the time. We're always having new features. And so it's a good problem to have because I love building cool stuff. And
Yeah.
I will tell everybody listening, if you have an idea, if you have a request, email us. We absolutely build our feature roadmap from what our authors ask us to do. Themes came about because people were asking us, hey, how can the color choices are great, but I use a very specific color of light blue for all of my book covers, and I'd love to be able to put that on my page. That's a really good idea. I have my own logo. How can I replace the Bookfunnel logo? And again, business-wise, it's probably not wise to let people remove your logos, but author-wise, that's exactly what we wanted to do. So we went off and built that. Certified Mail, which was built 4 years ago, but it absolutely came about because authors are like, I love the reader magnet delivery, but I really want to deliver an ARC and not have it publicly available. How can I do that? So if you have an idea, if you have a request, send us an email. We take all of that feedback into account.
I really love that you do that. You really do listen. And you're kind of in this unique position because you, as a developer, an author yourself, and somebody that has independently published, and then you also work with all these different authors and with the readers directly. And your support is always something that people talk about as just being really stellar support. So a couple of questions there about integration. So I would just say email Bookfunnel. They will like help you with any other questions if we haven't covered them. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. But one kind of feature that I really like that you're taking the direct feedback is like using it directly to develop the new features is like such an interesting way to kind of develop things, especially with independent publishing as it moves so quickly and everything changes so quickly. So I wanted to ask you about the audiobooks, which is kind of your latest, not latest actually, so you just added themes like a month ago. It's one of the newest additions that you have, was adding delivery of audiobooks. Did that come from requests that you received from authors?
Yeah, audiobooks is not our latest feature, but it's definitely
No.
our biggest feature.
Biggest.
We spent it took over a year to build out what would eventually become audiobooks. And I'll tell you that, it's so I will preface by saying that, we do listen to your feedback, but sometimes it takes a little longer. It just depends on what you're asking for. When we released Bookfunnel, which was in 2015, so I guess it's almost been 6 years now. So it was October 2015. And the very next week, we got our first email saying, hey, can you guys deliver audiobooks? And I'm like, we just did ebooks. We just got here a week ago. But people had started by 2015. Audiobooks were starting to sort of take off, and it was a really slow burn. But in the last few years, audiobooks have just shot up like crazy. And so more and more of those requests kept coming in. And unfortunately, we couldn't reuse a lot of the infrastructure that we had built with Bookfunnel and ebook delivery. It just, when you moved into the audiobook market, a lot of that stuff just couldn't be duplicated, or couldn't be used. So we had to go and build out entirely new things, like our app. We had to build an app that would have a player experience that was just as good as the one that that readers and listeners were already using, right? It couldn't be something that was like, oh, we have this app and it's kind of sucky, but it mostly works. Like, no, it had to be really, really good, because for me, my feeling was that what we found once we got it out into the market was that readers were not quite as dedicated to their audio app as they were to their e-reading app. When we built Bookfunnel initially, the goal was always, I want to get the book to the app that you're already reading in. The Kindle app, the Kobo app, the Nook app, all of them had the ability to sideload, which is the phrase that we all use that means nothing to readers at all, but to sideload a book into the app and just start reading it that way. So when Bookfunnel launched, that was what we did. We helped readers get it to whatever app they like to read in or whatever device they wanted to read on. But what was crazy was over time, we indie publishers, we tend to follow a lot we follow blogs, we watch live with Kobo Writing Life. Like, we do all these things, and we're so steeped in this stuff all the time that we feel like everybody else must already know everything that we know. But you would be surprised how many people we get in our support queue every week that have never read an ebook in their life. They actually read this book in paperback, got to the end, and the author said, hey, join my newsletter and get a free story. And now they've done that, and they have no idea how to read it. This is the first time they've ever done an ebook. And so we noticed over time that for a lot of people, they don't already have that reading app out there. So we built our app as a way to just say, yeah, listen, if you just want to read it, just start reading it in the app. It's really, really simple to do so. But we had to build all of that first before we could get to audiobooks, because there's no such thing as sideloading an audiobook. You can't just like, oh, here's a gigabyte of audio files, just stick them into the app for me. It doesn't work. So we had to build out all of the infrastructure and the app and a cloud-based player that people could listen in their browsers. And we had to build all of that stuff in order to get audiobooks out the door. And all of that came, yes, because more and more authors just kept saying, hey, when's Bookfunnel going to do audiobooks? What really happened was they would either ask us directly, or we would, we're in all the Facebook groups and we follow what's going on in the indie publishing world. But the question that I would see that comes up all the time was, hey, does anybody know the Bookfunnel for audiobooks, right? And that's not a great phrase to hear when you're a Bookfunnel. You're like, wait a minute, no, I want to be the Bookfunnel of audiobooks.
I know, it's like a backhanded compliment, isn't it?
Right. But the truth is, like, nobody was doing that. There wasn't, you could put your books, obviously audiobooks were expanding. Find a Way made it possible for everybody to get their audiobooks out to library systems and to all of these other audiobook stores. And so, audiobooks were really taking off in the same way that ebooks were 5 and 6 and 8 years ago. They were on that same sort of trajectory. But at that moment, which we didn't release audiobooks until November of last year, and we started work on it the year before that. But up until that point, you really couldn't do with your audiobooks what Bookfunnel had given you the freedom and the power to do with your ebooks, which is basically anything. You want to sell them direct from your website? Go. We'll handle the delivery. You want to gift a book to readers on their birthday? Go and do it. We'll handle the hard parts. We had built all that stuff for ebooks, but it didn't exist for audiobooks. I put my book up on Audible and I get 25 free codes that I can give to people. But that's not enough for some authors. That might be enough for a really small review team, but it wasn't enough that you could just hand them out willy-nilly to friends and family and things like that, which is something that you could do with your ebooks, right? And so when we built the audiobook feature, our goal was that everything on Bookfunnel that you can do with an ebook, you can also do with an audiobook. So gift a book, certified mail, you can now send certified mail advanced review campaigns for your audiobooks. You can send out gifted copies. You can sell audiobooks direct from your website, and we'll handle the delivery of all of it.
Nice. Yeah. Because audiobooks are so much larger. That's definitely something that Kobo learned when we were developing, because we have audiobooks, and then Kobo Writing Life that you can upload your audiobooks directly. And one major thing about developing, the allowing authors to publish audiobooks directly with us is that we wanted to do everything in house and all processing the files. And it lets us like just publish the books really, really quickly, right. Which is why there's like some delays on different other places sometimes. But yeah, audio files are just completely different, and there's no real standard. It's being developed, but doesn't really exist yet, which is kind of interesting because they've been around for such a long time.
It feels like we should be further along than we are. And I know that,
Absolutely.
like, if you have an audiobook and you're going to put it up on Audible, for example, it might be 3 months before that book gets published. And I understand that they're doing a level of quality assurance and they're checking the files and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't really buy into that. I think that most of the authors producing audiobooks today, they're using narrators, they're using sound engineers. Like it's already been done. We always say that we treat our authors like adults. If you want to upload your audiobook and it's been QA'd and you feel confident, I'm not going to be the one to second guess you. So when you upload a book, I'm sure Kobo is the same. When you upload a book to Bookfunnel, it's ready within an hour. You're ready to go. You can start sending it out any way you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Jane Steen says she is a big fan of the Bookfunnel app. And she had a question just saying, and I think you maybe answered it. Are there any plans, so with the audio, that you can just listen on your phone? Do you have plans to make it possible to listen on other apps? But you did mention that there is the browser listening abilities.
Yeah, so we have a browser-based player that we built out that came shortly after. So the original release, we felt like most people already listen to audiobooks in an app. So we put out an app for iOS and Kindle Fires and Android. And that's still how most people are listening to audiobooks. But there were people that are like, oh, I listen on my computer at work, or I have an old Chromebook that I use for my audiobooks. And so we quickly built out the browser-based player. And that player will play on just about everything. Like we tested it all the way back to like Windows XP and Firefox 3. You know, everything that we do, we test on every device. I always tell people, like, you know, you can't even imagine what my desk looks like. I just have, like, look at that cracked, like, I have tablets, I have Kobos, I have phones. Here you go. These aren't my phones. Like,
were you really happy when Internet Explorer is being?
Oh Lord, Internet Explorer is like the bane of every developer's existence.
I know.
Where nobody is shedding a tear. Not even Microsoft shed a tear when they buried that one, right? So even the Microsoft engineers are like, "Whew, thank God we finally got rid of that one."
Yeah.
But no, we test on every possible device. So when I say that, like, our browser-based player really will play on just about everything. That is what we do for people that are listening on their phones. And that is the vast majority of people everybody's carrying their smartphone, right? We all have it in our pocket. So our app will work on almost every smartphone released today. So you can take it in the car, you can Bluetooth it, send it to your Bluetooth speaker. You can do all that stuff. It really was, we weren't going to be happy unless we released something that was just as good as the huge, I mean, we're competing against, in audiobooks, we're competing against companies that are, I mean, billion and trillion dollar companies. Mm-hmm. And here we are, we're just 5 people. And when I say 5 people, that's our entire staff. That's, you know, me, I do most of the programming. We did hire a second engineer to help us work on the app.
I was going to ask if you're still doing everything yourself, because it's a tremendous amount of work.
I still do. So everything on the server, so everything you see Bookfunnel is still me. I get up every day and I work on Bookfunnel and I create new stuff. The app, we actually brought in a second engineer and he's been fantastic. So the app, really, the audiobooks and I built the ebook reader. So we have our own, we actually built our own ebook reader into the app, and we have a cloud-based reader. We built all of that from scratch. I built my own, you know, reading ebooks because I felt like all the stuff that was out there in the market just wasn't good enough for what we wanted. Again, if a reader is going to read a book in my app, I'm a really picky reader. I have very particular needs about how I want my app to behave. I want to be able to adjust the margins. I want to adjust the line spacing, the font size, all this sort of stuff. And so for me, if our app didn't do all that stuff, it just wasn't going to be good enough. But yeah, that's the browser player will play just about everywhere. And most of our readers are they're all using the smartphones and tablet app.
Yeah. So with all of this going on, have you been writing yourself, or has that really taken a back seat?
No, it's as much as I would love to. So I have ideas. I keep a folder where I'm still always writing down ideas. And, you know, it's, as a fantasy author, you can't help but want to build the world that you've started. When I first started writing my books, I purposely didn't do a lot of world building, because I knew that I've played Dungeons and Dragons my whole life.
It's
Uh,
having a resurgence, man. I know so many people now that play.
it's crazy how many kids like that are, like I hear from dads and like, oh, you play Dungeons. My son really wants to learn to play Dungeons and Dragons, which just warms my geeky little heart.
Oh yeah, I've got mates that are so excited about it that they
you can't see, but I have my Carpe Diem. This is my mug that my wife made me. She supports my geekery.
Nice.
And so, I've been telling stories my whole life just around a table with a bunch of my buddies, right? But you can't help it. These ideas come into your head. Writers, the ones that are out there that you're starting to write your books. It's always strange to me when I see that people are like, "Where do you get your ideas from?" I'm like, "Where do you not? How do you stop the ideas from coming?" Because especially in fantasy, there's so many things to work with, right? Nothing's off the table. You want dragons? Great, you got dragons. You want dragons that breathe lightning instead of fire? Go for it. Do that, right? So I can't stop the ideas. I write them all down because I do hope to get back to writing someday. But these days, there are so many things that I want to do for Bookfunnel, and I will say, don't pity me. I absolutely understand the writers that are out there that are working a full-time job, and they wish that they could get their writing up to that next level where they could take their writing and do it full-time. I absolutely get that. For me, I love what I do. I love writing code. I love solving problems. I love building Bookfunnel. So it's not like a second-class fiddle where like, well, I wish I could be a writer, but I guess I'll just write this Bookfunnel stuff. I love writing code, but for the authors that are out there that are writing it and want to go full time, just keep plugging away at it, and it'll get there. Because I absolutely get the people that are like, I really hate my job and I love writing, because you can't stop those ideas from coming.
Yeah, well, you're being very creative in this job as well. Like you're creating a whole thing for authors to have, and being able to use the feedback for that, I think, is really, really awesome. So I wonder if do you have any examples of something that surprised you, like a way that an author has used Bookfunnel that you didn't think of, that it would be used? I'm sure like that goes into a lot of things that you expand, but just wondering if there's anything that jumps to mind of like an interesting anecdote.
Sure. So the trend started a few years ago with authors, especially if you have a lot of readers coming in, the sort of bonus chapter or the extended epilogue, something that comes at the end of the book or even at the end of a series, was a really big draw, because especially if you're using it at the end, let's say you've done a trilogy, right? So at the end of the trilogy, you decide to put an extended epilogue, something that happens maybe even, think about the Harry Potter books for those of you who've read them. And I imagine there probably aren't too many of you who haven't, but we get
shunned at Kobo if we haven't read them.
Right? So you get to the end and the last, and no spoilers, but you get to the end of the Harry Potter books, and there's that last bit that happens many, many, many years into the future, right? So that, of course, of a series that big, you can't hold that back. That is the ending of the story, right? People want to know what happened to them. But in the case of a story where you've just led readers through a trilogy and they get to the end, and then that's the end of their story. But 10 years later, I want to tell you a little story that comes after, right? What's great about that is that it's really enticing. If I've just finished a trilogy, there's no way that I don't want to find out what happens 10 years later. I want to know what happens to these characters that I've now fallen in love with. But more than that little extended epilogue, it's absolutely useless to any reader who hasn't read the series. So everybody who goes and gets on your newsletter to download that extended epilogue or that bonus chapter, they are 100% fans, people that have gotten they read all 3 books. Otherwise, why would you want the extended epilogue, right? So I thought that was a really, really neat idea. And when I would go to conferences, and people, oftentimes the talk that I give at conferences, if you ever come and see me, is the sort of ninja tricks and the things that authors are doing on Bookfunnel that we see happening that we never thought of. And we thought, oh, that's a really, really cool idea. We had an author who he was doing a fantasy series, and at the end of every book, he offered a bonus short story. So it wasn't part of the book. It was he would take a side character and he'd pull them out, and it was sort of like, so Lord of the Rings fans, fantasy were like, so some of you probably have read the Lord of the Rings.
For our New Zealander.
Yeah. So some of you have probably read the Lord of the Rings series, but Tolkien had all of these other stories which he compounded into the Silmarillion, which was this basically sort of like the history of Middle Earth, but it had all of these other stories that were talked about, and legends and myths and things like that. So this author had taken and made a short story that came between each of the books as a little bonus something, right? It wasn't in the flow of the stories. It was sort of out of the flow, but it was really neat because it at the end of every book, the author was saying, thanks for reading. Here's a little something extra. Here's a little something for free. No charge at all. Just sign up for my newsletter. Or if you're already on my newsletter, you can just go download it right here. And they could go through and they could get that short story. But and I thought that was really neat. That was cool that you'd get to the end of a book and the author says, I have a little bit more that I want to tell you. And it's a great way to do that and maybe take a character that's like, I don't really have time to tell you this character's story in the thread of the actual novel, but it's a really good idea and I really want to tell it to you. But what also that allowed him to do was he could actually track where readers were in his series and how fast readers were getting through the books, right? So if I give you a freebie and I put it at the end of book 1 and I give you the same freebie at the end of book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, then I might be able to know that you've read to the end of one of my books, right? So by the time you join my newsletter, I put you into a separate group that says, okay, anybody joining from this link has read one of my books. But how neat would it be to know, oh, this guy has read all 5 of my books. So that's a super fan. That's somebody that you can put on your list and say, oh, I know exactly this person is going to want to read my new series, which also takes place in the same world. Those people are going to be the buyers. And sometimes that's really what your newsletter is good for, is not just putting out the books when you have new books, but just like Bookfunnel releasing new features. And sometimes that email just skates by you. Well, sometimes we don't send the email, but even sometimes when we do send the email, it's like, oh, I see Bookfunnel's new feature. I'm going to check that out later, right? And then they go off and they forget. We have busy lives. We're all doing something, right? So you have this reader who's read your whole 5-book series, and now you have the new book. I definitely want that person to know that I have this new book out, because I can see if you've read all 5 of my other series, you're definitely going to want to read this one. And so I thought that was a neat, it makes readers feel special. Giving them something extra for free always, it's like it's like going out for a burger and you get to the bottom of the bag and there's those extra bag fries. Oh man, you feel like you hit the jackpot if there's more fries down in the bottom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this author was giving away a little bit of something extra to make people feel special, but I got something out of it too. I got engagement. So at the end of each book, I get to know that you're actually reading through my books. You're reading through the whole series. And sometimes you can even see, wow, that person burned through the entire series of 5 books in 2 weeks. That's a super fan right there.
Nice. Yeah, Jane Ann was saying, she was asking if you would offer the bonus at the end of a series or use it at the beginning on the first book to try and entice them into your newsletter. But I think probably the more data, the better. So both options seem to be something that can be good to use.
So one of the things that you can do that's kind of a little trick that you can do with Bookfunnel is you can create, once you've uploaded a bonus story or something like that, you can create as many landing pages against that story as you want. And a landing page really is just another link. It's a different link. But when Bookfunnel goes and like through integrations, when we sign somebody up to your newsletter, we also pass along metadata that says which page, which link they signed up from. And so what that allows you to do is you could offer the same bonus story at the end of all 3 books in a trilogy, but by using a separate landing page from book 1 to book 2 to book 3, then you would actually know where that reader came from, whether they got there because they decided to download the bonus at the end of book 1, whether they got it at the end of book 2, or whether they got it at the end of book 3. And that data just tells you more like, oh, this reader waited till they got to the end of all 3 books before they downloaded the bonus. But I know that you read all 3 books. So once again, I take your email address and I move you over into this little group over here that says that person, that's a real reader who loves my books. And I definitely want to make sure that they open my emails and they know when I have a new book out.
Wow, that's really amazing. That's just golden data for book selling. Like, these are the people that you want to have on your mailing list and be able to like segment them so easily. And Bookfunnel really accommodates this. So we're sort of coming to the end of our hour here. This flew by, Damon. We got so many great questions. I wanted to ask, what's new? What are you working on now? I know that you're constantly rolling things out, but maybe you can talk about anything that you might not have emailed anyone about, or something new that you're working on.
So the themes thing came out about a month ago, and we didn't email everybody about that. So that was a really new feature. We have a new thing that we started beta testing a few weeks ago when we finally released it. But again, we haven't kind of published it wide, which is the ability to do custom domains. And part of that came about because of this Apple Facebook feud where they're having over privacy. And it's ultimately, it's a good thing for people to be in charge of their data, to be in control of their privacy. But it's a pain for some of the authors that are out there trying to use Facebook ads and try to run their business, right? Yeah. And so one of the things that is that you now, when you go and you run through Facebook ads, you have to verify your domain in order to run your ads and have your pixels fire and get all that data back. So now you can, through Bookfunnel, you can create a custom domain and you can point it at us. We have a lot of authors that use Facebook ads, but they run their ads directly to their Bookfunnel landing page. They don't send them to their website. They don't have an interim page. They just go right to their Bookfunnel landing page. So now you can create your custom domains, which is, for me, the next step in that author branding thing. So now you can, you talk about putting links in the back of your books and things like that. You could create, books or offers.tarakremen.com, and you can point that to us. We'll manage that domain and we'll manage all of your landing pages on it. But now, instead of going to a Bookfunnel website, they're actually going to offers.tarakremen.com. The nice thing about that is putting those in the back of your books looks really professional. So when they actually go to type in the link, they're not going to a Bookfunnel landing page. They're going to your landing page. And it's, again, part of your brand. But also now you can run those Facebook ads and you can verify your domain and you can run those ads directly to your Bookfunnel pages. Bookfunnel servers are still there serving up all of the work and doing all the work for you. But you have the domain and your presence is right there in the ad at the bottom when it says, where is this link going to take me? Oh, it's going to take you to books.tarakremen.com, not through bookfunnel.com. Not that I have any problem with you using Bookfunnel, but if you're going to put a link in the back of your book, I would strongly recommend that if you have the ability to do so, it's much better to go to yourauthordomain.com than to send it to somebody else. Because look, I hope you love Bookfunnel. I hope you never cancel your account. But one day you might decide that you want to cancel your Bookfunnel service and you don't want to use it anymore. But everybody out there who bought that book, maybe tens of thousands of people, they get to the end of that book and the link that's going to send them to your free reader magnet takes them to bookfunnel.com. And if you've canceled your account, well, that link's broken now. It's not going to work anymore. So the custom domains is and that's out there now. You can actually do that from your dashboard. So that's not a soon to come feature. That's one that we actually put out there really, really recently. I can't really talk about any of the other features we're working on. We're not like Apple private, but we're always working on new stuff, and we like to keep it under wraps, mostly just because we like to, look at this great new thing, right? And so we love to put it out there and really surprise people and delight people.
No, I like it. It's like you're kind of slowly taking over the author internet world, like having all these features, but you're doing it like really quietly, like removing your logos and everything. I like it. It's like this little helper that's sort of doing everything. Yeah. Carrie says, hi, Damon. And when there can be in-person events again, they're really excited to be able to use download codes on cards to give out free stories. So I think that's a really handy feature as well for authors at like events and things like that. Did you have much of that? I guess not really in the past year, like of the physical cards.
Not in the past year. So we called it print codes because that's really what it was designed for. You can print, a batch of individual codes and you can put them on bookmarks or postcards or business cards. And when you give that card out to a reader, they can redeem their book with that little code. And it's once they redeem their book, the code is dead, right? So it's really great. We have authors that not just use it for handing out free stuff, they actually use it for sales. We had an author who would go to farmer markets every weekend and she would sell all of her books on little postcards. And so you would buy the ebook for $3 or $4 and you would just take home a postcard with a little code on the back and you could go get your ebook. It came out because of romance authors who were going to some of these big reader conferences. And what's funny is like most of those conferences were all built around paperbacks and things like that. So the authors would show up and they would carry hundreds of pounds of books, on the plane, or they would ship them at huge cost, and they would go, and it was great. But what they started to find was that readers would go to these conferences, and of course they're getting all of these free books and they're getting signed, and it's beautiful. They love that. But they were getting so many books that readers were actually leaving books behind in the hotels because they couldn't carry them all home, right? Your bag can only carry so much before the airline's going to charge you hundreds of dollars for it. And so authors would show up and say, oh, here's a free copy of my book. And it was just a postcard that had a code on the back. And a lot of readers had already moved into ebooks. It's some readers are still very, very hardcore in paper, and that's great. You, as an author, you should absolutely put your book out there in every format that you can get it into. But for some of us, once I found ebooks, I wasn't going to read paper anymore. It was just too convenient for me to be able to just tap and download a book, and boom, I'm reading like that. And a lot more readers were like that. So yeah, we developed print codes after we got many, many emails from authors saying, hey, I'm going to a conference. How can I can give people a link, but then everybody can download the book from that link. How could I give them something that's unique that only one person could download, and then it's done? And so, well, we don't have that, but we could build that. And so we went off to build that because we had authors asking us for it. And we thought that would be a really cool idea. And wouldn't it be great if indie authors could just take business cards and carry their ebooks in their pocket? And that was not something that they had been able to do before. So we love ideas like that.
Nice. So speaking of conferences, what have you got coming up now that the world is sort of opening up again? And where can people learn more about Bookfunnel?
So I am booked for NINC, which is at the end of September. And then the 20 books to 50K in Las Vegas. And September is NINC. And then at the end, in November, will be 20 books. So those are the only two that I've got booked so far this year. And it looks like we're probably going to make it there. The numbers keep going down, and everything seems to be going pretty well. So I have hotels and flights booked, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do that. You can find out more about Bookfunnel at bookfunnel.com. We don't try to be tricksy with the names. And there's a button right there on the website where you can contact us if you have any questions whatsoever. Our support team is always there to answer questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Damon, for chatting with us for this hour. I think it was super informative. Lots of questions. In fact, we might have to bring you back a third time at some point.
A thrice time. Wow. I'll be the only, then I get to have the claim of being the only author who got invited back 3 times.
3 times. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for the great questions. And yes, reach out to Bookfunnel if there's anything that we didn't cover during this. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.